Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating book, Ravindra Nayak's The Data Science Super Agent Volume 11, The Workflow Intelligence Builder. Now listen, this isn't your typical manual about the latest shiny algorithm or some futuristic software hype. Not at all. It's actually a survival guide for reality. We're going to completely rethink how AI projects really survive out there in the wild once the initial excitement wears off. We're moving way beyond the hype to hit the absolute bedrock of how intelligent, repeatable work actually gets done. So let me ask you a question, one that honestly haunts almost every data team out there. Why do so many incredibly impressive AI projects just fail right after the demo? I mean, you've probably seen it firsthand, right? The model looks absolutely brilliant in a controlled presentation, the Capstone project is flawless, the stakeholders are giving a standing ovation. But then, it gets deployed into the wild. And within weeks, it completely collapses. Poof, gone.
And let's add another layer to that. Why do teams constantly repeat the exact same mistakes? Why do we have these long meetings that just end without any clear decisions? Or why does a weekly report feel like you're starting entirely from scratch every single Monday? And maybe the biggest question of all, why does the so-called intelligence of a system completely vanish the very second the original builder leaves the company? The sheer friction of everyday data work is just exhausting, isn't it?
Just pause and think about that for a second. We are constantly chasing these larger models and faster tools, and we're so quick to blame the technology when things break. But perhaps the problem isn't intelligence at all. Perhaps the problem is workflow. As Nayak brilliantly points out in the book, the illusion of a perfect demo completely blinds us to the messy reality of daily operations. We really have to shift our mindset away from these isolated one-off successes and look toward the actual paths that make work dependable.
All right, let's dive right into part one, Beyond the Capstone.
Now, a capstone project or a really polished demo is incredibly valuable. I mean, it proves possibility. But workflows protect repetition. To really grasp this, there's a great conversation in the book between a learner named Ravi and an expert Mira. Ravi is looking at his daily grind, running a weekly report, applying an AI summary, and hitting send. He looks at it and thinks it's just a single action. He asks, "It's still just one task, right?" And Mira replies, "No, Ravi, it is a path." That single, profound shift in perspective, that is the absolute core philosophy of this entire explainer. Useful work has to be viewed as a continuous, protected path. See, beginners only look at the visible surface, the final report, the printed chart, that one single tool. But true workflow intelligence? That only begins when you start seeing the relationships over time. Which brings us to part two. What is a workflow? Let's totally strip away all that corporate jargon for a minute and look at this from absolute first principles. Notice the fundamental difference here. A task is really just one action. It's a single box you check off your to-do list. But a workflow, that is a continuous path. It handles what enters the system, what actually gives that information its meaning, what action changes the state of the work, and finally, what leaves. When yesterday's work actively affects today's work, and today's work shapes tomorrow, well, the path matters deeply. And that brings us crashing into the harsh friction of reality. Part 3, Why AI Demos Fail. Think about a beautiful stock-out prediction model for a second. It works flawlessly in the lab, but out in the real world, maybe the promotion data arrives 2 days late from another department. Maybe managers start treating the AI's predictions as automatic orders without even thinking about it. Or maybe seasonality completely changes. Or the model flags so many alerts that overwhelmed users just stop reading them altogether. You see, none of these failures can be solved simply by writing a better algorithm. Demos control the conditions that real work refuses to hold still. In a demo, your inputs are perfect, your audiences are super attentive, and risks are conveniently hidden. But in reality, inputs change constantly. Versions update, audiences shift, review requirements evolve. AI shouldn't just float above your work like some unaccountable source of magic. It absolutely must live inside the messy, changing environment of your actual workflow. Okay, so how on earth do we build something that actually survives all this chaos? Simple, we give it a spine. Let's look at part 4, the 7-part workflow spine. Every dependable AI system needs a visible backbone. If your work is missing any of these vertebrae, the whole body is going to collapse. So here is the 7-part workflow spine. 1. Input, which protects the origin. 2. Context, protecting the meaning. 3. Action, to protect the movement. 4. Review, which protects trust.
5. Output, protecting usefulness. 6. Memory, protecting continuity. And 7. Repair, which protects improvement. Think about your own day-to-day work for a second. If context is missing, your AI's action might be 100% accurate, but entirely meaningless to the business. Or if review is weak, well, trust just becomes a total accident.
Now, I want to zero in specifically on number 7 here, repair, because this is absolutely crucial. A correction is just, fixing a typo on today's report. But a repair, that is a fundamental change to the workflow itself after a failure happens. A mistake only becomes genuinely useful when it shows you exactly where the path needs to be fixed, so that specific error never, ever happens again. Over time, your repair log literally becomes a history of learning.
And this takes us to the true philosophical heart of our explainer. Part V, judgment before automation. Look, there is a dangerously popular assumption out there right now that literally everything should be instantly automated. The human involvement is just some annoying bottleneck that we need to engineer away. But listen, automation simply increases motion. If your workflow has hidden conditions or weak review processes, speed is just going to move that weakness faster. As the book says, speed should carry judgment, not outrun it. What an incredibly powerful thought. Let this serve as a bit of a cautionary tale. Imagine an AI assistant writes a beautifully clean meeting note, but it misses one tiny crucial phrase, that an action was approved only if the support backlog dropped below a certain threshold. Suddenly, that pristine AI summary just turned a conditional approval into a dangerous, absolute commitment. Sure, the tool saved effort, but it completely lost the boundary. Take a look at the human review gate mapped out here. It's so important to realize that human review isn't a failure of automation, it is the boundary of responsibility. A calculator can do the math all day long, but a human still has to actually sign the contract, right? You have to clearly define the trigger for a review, exactly who the reviewer is, what evidence they need to see, the specific decision they are making, and the hard limits of the system's authority. Which finally brings us to the last stage, Part V, the AI operating system. So how do we pull all of this together? We do it by combining these individual, protected workflows into a true AI operating system. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't about buying some massive, expensive new software suite. An operating system is simply the place where recurring work knows exactly where to return. It's about giving judgment a reliable home. These are the practical elements of an AI operating rhythm. You've got weekly audits to notice any drift. You have memory systems, so the AI doesn't wake up with amnesia and start from zero every day, but also doesn't drown in outdated junk data. You define strict tool roles so an AI agent knows exactly what it's allowed to touch, and you set crystal clear escalation rules for when it needs to just stop and ask a human for help. Ultimately, intelligence isn't about having louder, faster machines. It is about building judgment that actually survives.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Ravindra Nayak's book is absolutely not a promotional guide to shiny new software. It is a genuine survival manual for real-world AI operations. It teaches you from the ground up that a careful, well-designed project is worth vastly more than a noisy, fragile portfolio of demos. It's about building intelligence that actually survives the messy, constantly changing reality of business.
Because at the end of the day, projects end, capstones get graded, demos fade away into memory. But useful work always returns. And true intelligence is not merely producing fast answers. As Nayak writes, intelligence is designing paths that can remember, repair, and improve. I really hope this explainer has shifted how you view your own daily workflows. If you want to dive deeper into these concepts, you can find the link to explore the book down in the description. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and I will catch you in the next one.